So what we're stopped at yesterday is how can I graph y equals with a ax squared, okay? So we looked at the different transformation that y equals ax squared. Depending on that value of a, what can happen to my graph? Do you guys recall this? So if a is greater than 1, what would happen to my graph? It's a vertical stretch, okay? If a is between 0 and 1, what would happen to my graph? It's a vertical compression. If a is negative, a reflection, so it's going to open down, okay? So we talked about that this a, which is a number that is multiplied by, right? So it's any number. It could be 5, it could be a half, it could be any number, it could be negative 7, right? Whatever that number is, that is my a, okay? And depending on that value of a, then I can decide what kind of transformation I have. Now, we also talked about what would be the vertex of something like this. What would be my vertex? Do I have any change from the original? So what's my vertex for this kind of function? So when we drew this, where was the vertex? At 0, 0. It was at the origin. No matter how the graph looked like, it was at the origin, right? It was my vertex, which is that point, was at the origin, right? So my vertex is at 0, 0. And then we talked also about the step pattern. Do you remember the step pattern? What is it? 1, 3, 5 multiplied by the a value. Multiplied by the a value. Okay. So here is another we have here. Okay? We have y equals 1/4, so that's 1 over 4, or 0.25. Okay? X squared. What's your a value here? A is 0.25. So if you're going to describe the transformation of this, what would you say? Right here. What would you say about the transformation here? The a value is between 0 and 1. Vertical compression. Do you remember that? Because the a value, right? So this value is between 0 and 1, right? So we call this a vertical compression. And then remember I told you if you want to add to this, you say vertical compression by a factor of 0.25. Okay? So if I'm looking at a vertical compression, that means, is my graph going to look wider or is it going to look narrower? So remember my elastic band. If I do a vertical compression, right, that means is it going to look wider or is it going to look narrower? It's going to look wider, okay? If I'm doing a vertical stretch, it's going to look narrower. In this case, it's going to look wider, okay? All right, so my step pattern is, so let's start by writing the vertex and the step pattern. What's my vertex? No. 0, 0. That's the vertex. What's my step pattern? But remember the step pattern is multiplied by a. You don't just say 135. It's multiplied by A. What's my A value? 0.25. Okay? So 0.25 times 135. What's 0.25 times 1? 0.25 times 1 is 0.25. Okay? Then you have 0.25 times 3. 0.75. 0.25 times 5. 1.25. Okay? So my step pattern now is is 0.25, 0.75, and 1.25. Okay? So remember, as we did yesterday, so that means you go up by 2, whatever, right? In this case, how much are you going to go up by? 0.25. This one, you're going to go up by? This one, you're going to go up by 1.25. Okay? So now your step pattern is a little bit different. Because my step pattern is this weird, I'm going to have to kind of work with my scale. Okay? So my y-axis scale is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to go up by 1. Okay? I'm going to make it go up by what? What do you want to make it go up by? What would you choose for your y scale? You're going to choose 0.25, right? It kind of makes sense. If I go up by 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1, 1.25, 1.5, right? So this way, I can locate my points easily. My vertex is at 0, 0, so I'm going to place my vertex first. And then my step pattern says I'm going to go up by 0.25 over by 1, always. Okay? So I'm going to go up by 0.25 over by 1, and I can locate my point. Do we understand that? Okay. Then my next step, how much do I need to go up by? 0.75. So let's see. 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. So that means I have to go 1, 2, 3 up. Make sense? So this is where, and then 1 to the right, so I'm going to end up right here. Okay, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and then 1 to the right. Okay. And then for my next one, I have to go up 1.25. So the way, yeah. No, because I'm not at 0.75. I'm going up 0.75. So if you're going up 0.75 from 0.25, where do you end up? At 1, right? Because you are at 0.25 and you're adding 0.75. Okay? Now if I'm going to get to my next point, I'm at 1 and I'm adding 1.25. Where would that be? I'm at 1 and I'm adding 1.25. Where would that be? 2.25. I don't have room on my graph to fit it, so I'm not going to fit that point. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go up 1 to the left 1 and then up 0.75 to the left 1. Okay? So if you look at my graph, it's going to look like this. Okay? Remember that these don't represent the points, they represent how much up you're going to go or how much down you're going to go. It depends. Does that make sense to you guys? It takes time. Okay? Just remember that the first thing that you're going to locate is your vertex. That's very important to locate your vertex. Then after that, you're going to have to find your step pattern. Okay? And your step pattern is A multiplied by 135.